go on the end of the note. You want to move now? Because remember we had yesterday, Lisa came at the end. Straw, please. Oh, hi, Amanda. There you are.
Did you wait for me?
We did.
Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, to today's panel on democratizing trust, open source enabling tooling and to enable safe, secure, and trustworthy AI. We're going to start with a group picture. Sorry about that. It'll be quick.
Just stand up. How are you doing, man? No.
This is my worst day.
Okay, so with that, I think we can get our panel started. I'll make a few introductory remarks before we dive into the meat of and the really exciting part of our session today. We're currently living through an extraordinary moment in AI development. Over the past couple of years, we've seen rapid advances in AI capabilities, but also growing questions about trust, safety, and who gets to participate in shaping AI's future. At the OECD and the Global Partnership on AI, we've long believed that AI systems should be both innovative and trustworthy while respecting human rights and democratic values. And that's why the OECD AI principles adopted back in the Middle Ages, 2019, emphasized that the development, deployment, and use of AI systems should be guided by factors such as transparency, accountability, robustness, and inclusive governance. And in line with these principles, today's discussion is going to center on two critical questions. First, how can open source tools help democratize trust in AI systems? And second, how can these tools support safe, secure, and trustworthy AI development? So throughout the conversation, our panelists will explore, one, what the open source AI tooling landscape looks like today, and where the gaps are. Two, how can open source tools build capacity or help build capacity in underrepresented regions? And three, how and which of these tools can help both the technical and the non-technical communities monitor and assess AI safety, security, and trustworthiness. So before diving in, I just give a short recap on what of tools and metrics out there to help AI actors build and deploy trustworthy AI systems. But these tools are often hard to find, and at times they're absent from ongoing AI policy discussions among governments. And that's why we created a catalog of tools and metrics for trustworthy AI. We started that about 6 years ago. What's hard is not building the catalog, it's keeping it up to date. And that's really the grunt of the work. So this is available online at oecd.ai/catalog, and it's really a one-stop shop to make it easier to identify helpful approaches, mechanisms, and practices. And today, the catalog features over 900 tools designed to help AI actors identify resources to develop, deploy, and use AI systems in a manner that's fair, transparent, explainable, robust, secure, and safe while respecting human rights. And that's, I'm not saying all the tools do all that, but looking through the tools, we have tools that that are specialized in at least some of these values. And in line with today's panel and the work of the summit's working group on safe and trusted AI, we just launched a targeted call for submissions focusing specifically on open source tools. And these submissions will be featured on the catalog and also directly inform the Trusted AI Commons, which is a key deliverable of the working group, the Indian working group on safe and trusted AI of the India Impact Summit. So now to explore these questions, I'm really delighted to introduce our distinguished panelists. So with us today we have Amanda Brook, who's sorry if I butchered that, Brock, who is CEO of Open UK. Mark Sermon, president of the Mozilla Foundation, who also represents, we'll get into, he wears several very important hats. We have Audrey Herblanc-Stoop, who's senior vice president for global public affairs and communications at Mistral AI, a French AI developer. We have Oliver Jones, Deputy Director at the UK Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, who's responsible for international AI policy, and Balaraman Ravindran, who's Professor and Head of the Department of Data Science and AI at the India Institute of Technology, Madras. So thank you very much for being here today, and let's dive in. So to get us all started, I'd like to ask the same question to all our panelists, I guess maybe from the audience is left to right, so starting with you, Ollie, which is, why are open source tools relevant for trustworthy AI? And where do you see the biggest gaps in the open source tooling ecosystem, and what would it take to close it? Just that.
Thank you very much. That's a lot in the first question. Yeah.
Is this a bit better? Okay, fantastic. There's a lot in that question. I will try doing it justice. For those of you who don't know, the UK has an AI Security Institute, which is the first kind of state-backed research institute trying to advance some of the techniques and science on AI safety and evaluations. We have an open source tool. I hope it's a recognizable name to lots of people in the audience, called Inspect, which tries to do exactly this. Tries to open source a tool for the benefit of a wider community, which is developed around it, to try solving some of these trustworthiness and safety kinds of questions. How big is the gap? I will leave to others, but that's our small contribution so far.
Okay. Thank you very much, Oliver. Actually, I'm gonna swap over. Sorry for the change. I'm gonna move over to Amanda, because for Open UK's, given Open UK's work and deliverables for the summit, which I understand are pretty sizable, and bring your perspective from Open UK.
Thank you very much for having me along today. How many of you in the audience are part of the open source community? Made a contribution? That's really great to see, and I'm going to start by saying thank you so much. We had even more people in this room this morning. It was slightly chaotic, but it is really exciting that India has such an engaged and large open source community. To answer the question, I think I'm going to talk about two things. So for those of you who know me, and one or two of you know me very well, I'm an ex-lawyer, if there is such a thing. I was a lawyer for 25 years, and I started my open source career in 2008 in Canonical. And the engineers and I used to talk about issues, and then I would go and talk to risk professionals in other organizations. And what I quickly learned, that when you have a risk or a legal challenge around technology, the answer isn't regulation and it isn't law. It's usually a software or a technical solution. And it works best that way, because that's what the engineers, the people who build the technologies, understand and can work with simply. So if I said to you, here's a 2-inch printout of the EU AI Act, go build some AI, you're not going to do it. But if I say to you, here's the UK's Inspect platform that will allow you to self-certify the safety of your outputs, your LLM, you might well do it. And you can self-certify as well as do that through the AISI. So that utility of that tool to enable the process is critical. And I think it was, Inspect was probably the first big tool that we saw open source, and it's critical that it's open sourced because then it's freely available to anyone to use for any purpose. And that gets back to the, what made open source great, what got us adoption, was that free flow and that trust that you can put in open source, that when you take it, you use it, you can pass it on to others. So I think there's a sort of double-edged answer there. There's, from a legal perspective, the best way to make this happen is actually by giving the engineers the tools that create your outputs, so your outcomes that you're hoping to achieve. And then I would say the second thing is that if you try to control engineers, tell me if I'm wrong, you fail, right? You're all nodding. I knew you would nod. So what you have to do is engage them and take them with you. And by helping them and doing stuff that they want to engage with, you're going to get your best outcomes.
Thank you very much, Amanda, and fully subscribe to your to your assessment that giving a large document to engineers might not lead the results you are looking for. So, Mark. I know I'm changing everything. Sorry about that. I'm spicing it up a little bit. Mark, I'd love to hear
you're just sitting in the wrong order. You're doing fine. Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts, particularly from Mozilla. Okay, that was not me. From from Mozilla's and Roost's, it was maybe the Rooster, experience championing openness.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Karina. Thanks you everybody for having me here. As you just suggested, I'm here representing Mozilla, but also an organization that launched at the last AI Summit in Paris called Roost, which makes open source online safety tooling. And I would say kind of two things, and picking up a little bit on Amanda's. One is really a critical thing is the tooling that allows us to look focused on open source AI tooling for developers. We're not building models. We're really trying to make it easier to adopt open source AI. And in the early set of libraries we've released is something called Any Guardrail. It does exactly what you can imagine. Is there's a whole proliferation of open source tooling around guardrails, around evaluations, making it easier to pull them in as a developer, switch them out, compare them. The ability to consume things, which is what, you think back to something like Ubuntu or early Linux distributions, what they did wasn't create the Linux kernel or the whole ecosystem. They made it easier to pull from the ecosystem. So I think as we see more and more trust and safety tooling, making it easier as a developer just to not have it be a hassle to deploy, but easy to deploy is a really key piece. And Roost is doing something in a very specific area in that same way, is that big companies, Meta, formerly Twitter, those types of folks have invested a ton in trust and safety for things like social media, but most small companies don't have that kind of trust and safety tooling. What Roost is doing is making trust and safety tooling so you can do content moderation, CSAM detection, all of those things free and open source, so that if I'm a small startup, I've actually got an ability. Somebody like Blue Sky uses Roost's Osprey libraries to do 45 million events a day. They do, I think, 100,000 content takedowns and enforcing rules a day, all through open source software that basically does what Facebook does, but without having to have this huge set of resources behind it. So one thing is tooling. The other thing I would say, and maybe we can pick it up later, especially because we have a model builder beside us, is really looking at not just open weight models. I mean, open safety is not just about the models, but it does matter that the open source quality of being able to inspect and study what is inside is really important and is much more difficult with models that have gone through this expensive pre-training, and we don't know what went into them. And so I think moving more and more to where we can see the provenance of the pre-training, what data went into it, inspecting in a way that we can rely on. So it's not just open weight models, but something closer to open source. That is a big gap that needs to be filled.
Thank you very much, Mark. So now I'm going to turn to you, Audrey, and ask for your perspectives on your perspective and Mistral's perspective on this, especially given Mistral's leadership in this ecosystem.
Yes, thank you. And I do not want to repeat everything that has been said. So maybe give the perspective of the model builder and why we believe that it's important that we have more open weight or open source model in this world, especially where we see the trends going more in the direction of more closed source model than open ones. When we started all of this 2.5 years ago, it was a strong belief within the founders that all of this should be open. And why they believe that is that because they were really convinced at the time, and we are still even more convinced now, that for such a transformative technology, technology that has such a big impact on our society, our government, our infrastructure, our defense, our power, soft power, hard power in the world, that if it is just in the hands of a few largely American companies, it ultimately can be a problem. A problem for each government to reclaim its autonomy, a problem for each citizen to know what is done with their data, a problem for company and enterprise to know how to use it and to not provide all of their trade secrets to those model providers. And that's why at the very, very beginning, it was really strong for this company to create models that are open weight and indeed not fully open source yet. But we really believe that we need to put something in the hand of everybody, because then you give the control to the people and you do not retain the control in the hand of a few. And for such an important technology, it is so important. And on the tooling, indeed, having some tools like is this one working better? Yeah. It's really key for small companies, and Mistral is just a 2.5 years old company. So having the ability to build on top of open source solution and open source tools is really so important for developers and engineers inside those small structure to actually move faster. And indeed, we are facing the tension between trying to be as open and transparent as we can, and at the same time protecting our trade secret in a race that is going so fast and is so competitive. And that's where we need to find the articulation and the balance.
Thanks, excellent, Audrey. So now I'll turn to Balaraman. And as chair of the working group on safe and trusted AI, and given your academic background, what's your take on this?
Yeah, so obviously we do support having more and more of these tools in the open source, and not necessarily the models. I mean, I don't know if we have a say in whether the model should be open source or not, if people are going to listen to us, but certainly the benchmarking, the evaluation that are there, right? They should be in the open. And at least as an academic, I can tell you that we are putting our efforts where our mouth is. So all the work that we do at the Center for Responsible AI that I head are being put out in the open, right? So all the benchmarks that we have built for India-specific deployments and things like that are in the open. But now stepping back and talking about the trusted AI commons a bit. So you had asked initially what is missing in the whole ecosystem. And I do believe a focus on the global south is missing, right? So we don't have enough benchmarks, we don't have enough data sets to test our models on, and we already know that these models fail when you're stress testing them on Indian languages, and sometimes it's easy to jailbreak multilingual models when you're looking at low resource, you're interacting with them in low resource languages, and so there are a lot of these already well established things. So in fact, recently I was looking at the statistic. So the Delhi police have stopped using facial recognition technology because they feel that the recognition rate is low for Indian faces, and they don't want to rely on that too much as a investigative tool anymore. So that's one of the things that is coming up. So a lot of these things are not even tested properly for the Indian context, right? So as an example, I usually quote this, right? So a lot of work in India on building AI bots to help farmers, and so in the agriculture is a sector of focus here. And somebody says that they have a bot that can work in the agri sector. I mean, there are, people are testing it. People are creating tools to test it when they are trying to deploy it in the market, but these are not open. These test benches have not really been evaluated. They have not been stress tested by the community before, so that we can't really, rely on these as a benchmark, right? Even if there's this one company which is doing rigorous testing, if the and this is certainly something that's true across the global south. And I mean, some of the bigger organizations like like working with ML Commons, people are trying to do improve the representation of resource constrained, resource poor languages in these tests, but not enough. I mean, we are talking about 1,200. Have to invest a lot of resource, and this can't be done by one organization, by one country trying to invest in this. It has to be a global effort, and that's what we are trying to hope with to achieve with the Trusted AI Commons. Work with organizations like OECD, which have been doing this for a while, but also try to take the same protocols that you use, but then give it a more of a global south focus, so that we can make sure that AI models that are being deployed in applications where more people need it, right, are also trusted. So I think that's we have to go that way. I mean.
Thank you, Balaraman, and those are really, really critical gaps, and they're also identified by an initiative that we support at the OECD. We're the secretariat for, which is the Global Partnership on AI, and of course that's a critical topic in that fora. So now I wanted to ask you each sort of a question, the same question, which is really kind of to look forward and building on what you've all shared with us today, and in light of this year's summit focus on democratizing AI resources, looking ahead in 5 years, what would be for you a sign or a clear sign that an open source trustworthiness ecosystem has failed or has not, or has succeeded, especially for underrepresented regions and communities? So switching the order, well, this is going to be complicated. Okay, I'll switch the order for fun. Okay, Mark. Let's start with you, and then Amanda.
I mean, I think where we want to be in 5 years flows from some of what you've heard here, and I think certainly, generally, the shift, whether it is safety or trustworthiness or just generally human progress, looking at a much more distributed AI ecosystem in terms of who builds things, who gets to shape where they go, who benefits from them. So I think the Global South piece is an absolutely central piece, or one example of where we don't want the core of what technology we all use in our lives. Like, how many people here have an iPhone or an Android phone? Right? So they all come from about 5 miles from each other in terms of where the software is designed. And so I think where I would like to be in 5 years is somewhere very, very different than that. We have an opportunity is much more diversity in the production and the economics and the power structure of how AI works.
Okay, great. Amanda.
So 5 years is a very long time. I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months right now. Do you think so? I don't know where Karen is, but he'll tell me where I'm going. I think the what matters, but the how is almost more important to me. And I think in the world that we are living in, of this geopolitical shift, of all the friction, Mark Carney's comments about middle nations, if we want to have a collective, collaborative AI future, we have to be brave and we have to cross borders and continue to collaborate globally. If we don't do that, none of this is going to work. Secondly, I think that if we recognize that we can't do this without open source, we have to pay it respect and open up the things that we use open source to create. So what we give back, we have to, give back properly and open it up, and we have to see that shift coming from companies across the planet. And then I think the third thing is about access and engagement with the open source community. So it's very easy to say what we're going to achieve and to put a website together and fill it with tools that you're going to want to use. But you then need to find a way to get that to the right people. And I talk about the submarine under the digital economy a lot. We are, as an open source community, not recognized in our home geographies normally. That's why we're in small rooms. We are an internationally collaborative community, and to be recognized for what we do and what we build, we need to have governments engage properly with your communities and talk to all of you. And it means they need to shift the communication channels and the engagement process from what they're used to doing to what suits you.
Thanks. That's great. I do feel a little, targeted with the catalog of tools, but okay.
Sorry, no, it's not. It's just
No,
generally how
I'm
you then
joking.
take that catalog and get it engagement with this group
Yeah.
of people.
No. It's an excellent point. It's absolutely accurate. Balaraman.
So in 5 years from now, I'm not even sure what the landscape of AI is going to look like. But as we all agree, open source should be a strong component of it. I mean, if you look at how computer systems development has happened, open source drove it in ways that we never thought we wouldn't have imagined if there had been just an IBM or a Microsoft driving the whole thing, right? Just two companies driving it, so we don't know what would be the shape of things. And opening it up, right, will certainly get a lot more participation going in. So having said that, though, what is different with AI? I mean, if there had been open source, when there had been only mainframes, I'm not sure how much of an impact that would have been, because there was so much investment that was needed in getting the hardware done before we could, think about open source software. Open source software had this impact because we had cheap PCs, right? Right now, if you think about the investment, hardware investment needed in building frontier models, right? It's exorbitant, right? So it's not that, even if you open source things, it's not going to completely democratize it. People are just still going to be fine-tuning these models. They probably know what is happening maybe they can be a little bit more focused in their fine-tuning of these models, but truly to contribute in pushing that frontier model capacity, right? We need to figure out how we are going to get this running on cheaper hardware. I mean, the entire stack should be more democratized and more widely usable before we can see the true impact of open source. That's what I feel.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. I don't know what to call you.
Thanks. So just picking up on what we've heard, I think there's a big gap on state capacity, basically. We are proud of a quite a modest initiative, a network of international safety institutes, and the point of that is to try getting inspect and like tools into the hands of as many people as possible. And I think this week, if we're preempting by a few days, we're going to welcome the inauguration of a network for the Global South. And I think that's a great initiative, which is about building state capacity as broadly as possible so that we can avoid some of the kind of pitfalls that we've heard about a kind of sense of disempowerment, but also reduce the frictions of putting these tools in the hands of as many people as possible.
Okay, thank you. Audrey?
It's difficult to be the last one every time, Karen, you know.
I won't do that again. I'm winging it.
That's
So
fine.
I'll
No, on top of all of this, I think indeed if we want to make that work and make sure that the biggest majority of people will access the technology, indeed, as it was mentioned, we need to make sure that it is culturally tailored for everybody. And to do that, that is what mentioned, we need to be able to have greater data sets, more open data sets, and we need a strong action from governments and states and universities to make sure that we can live in this world of nuance and not just with mainstream culture. And that's but German, Italian, and Spanish for the first model in 2023. And since then, we train multiple models in multiple languages, but we will not succeed to build trust if the models are not good enough in language. And when I say language, I mean cultural diversity and everything that goes behind it. And we can do everything we can to work harder, have more infrastructure to train. If there's not a global movement to share those data openly, we will not succeed.
Okay, thank you so much to all of you for these. These are really compelling visions. What would success look like? Anybody?
So I'll give you 3 guesses at the word I'm going to use. Success would look like openness. It would look like openness that was trustable because it was transparent. It would look like openness that created access for all and allowed more innovation and allowed all of you to access the tools that you need to build better AI. And I'm going to just make a quick shout out for Ollie and the work they've done at AISI. Before, when I was saying that we need to see our governments engage more with the open source communities, the people who are building the tools and the catalogs engage with you all, AISI actually worked with us to do case studies when they first launched Inspect. And they came along to our last 2 conferences and they conducted surveys amongst the open source community about how they should be doing this. Was this working the way we wanted it to be? And I think we need to see a lot more of that kind of engagement. And we need to see open source and openness recognized as a digital public good, where we've got funding globally from the public sector and our governments as well as from enterprises. And I think enterprise and the public sector each keep each other honest by having them together. And I think that's going to be really important to a successful and open future.
Thank you, Amanda. Balaraman, from your point of view, what would success look like?
Well, given in the short term, I hope we get the trusted AI commons up and running.
Yeah.
Have it contribute.
Okay.
In the long run. So, right. So I would love for the entire community to evolve, to start thinking about trust primary objective, not as a post hoc, evaluation-based verification that we do right now. So trust should come, it should be the source of the design first, before we get into, let's do whatever works and then we'll try to figure out if it's trusted or not. I think that mindset really has to change in the AI community. Part of it comes from, the researchers never having to worry about real world deployment until about 5 years ago. right? So I mean, we're all working in the laboratories, but then we really have to get this the safety and trust as the central design tenet. And once we have that, and once we have our whole design chain, AI design chain flowing from the trust, I think that would be the ideal situation to be in. I don't know if we'll need 5 years, but that's certainly what success would look like.
Okay, thank you. And this is a really valuable perspective. Oliver, what about from the safety and security standpoint? What does success look like?
Yeah, so I think we could be over-optimistic that the diversity of our open source ecosystem is the total panacea to all of the risks that we know now and risks we don't even know about. I think, even if we do have, much better developed ecosystem and state capacity, I think success involves a recognition that there will be remaining gaps. And I think there is room for a discussion at national and international levels about kind of resilience members and what the measures and what the policy response could look like, which I think is a key component of a kind of wider trusted ecosystem, at the risk of sounding a slightly down note.
It's important to consider both the upbeat and the risks. We can't pick one over the other. Okay, now I would like to. I think as we move towards our final question, we have 14 minutes left. I realize that it would be pretty impossible to distill everything we've discussed. But if the audience remembers, just one thing about open source tools from the session, what should it be? And what's one concrete way they can help the public at large and the audience in this room can help move this global effort forward? So let's keep the responses to about a minute each, so we still have time for questions from the floor. And I'm Audrey, starting with you.
I think the main thing I would like people to remember when we think about how we should promote open source and continue to build on that. I think the first thing is, how do we foster an ecosystem? How do we make sure it's a vibrant ecosystem? And that's the only response to actually closed approach, is to have a very active open source ecosystem. So my take would be to encourage everybody to build open source, to build on top of open source models, to build open source tools, to use them, to benchmark it, to publish about it. And the more we'll have a strong activity and a strong ecosystem, the more we can build a very powerful ecosystem and open source for the long term.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, and then Mark, Oliver, and Balaraman, please.
So it's Chinese New Year today, and the Chinese ecosystem have built the leading position today in AI and open source. And that hasn't happened overnight. That's taken them 8 years to do it. They first announced in 2017 that they were doing this. They had a 5-year plan in 2020 and a new one at the end of October last year. And it's very clear, it's very straightforward, it's very concerted. What we'll see from them in the next months and years is that they're going to reduce the number of competing Chinese open source products, and they're going to tie it more to monetization. That's the next step of their strategy. If we want to build open source, if we want to build a future that is open and transparent and trustable for everybody and creates this innovation collaboratively, creates access for all, a policy or a law even is not going to do that. It just doesn't work. And we've seen that demonstrably over the last 10, 15 years. And what we have to do is invest, and we have to invest in the landscape, the ecosystem that sits underneath open source, that enables open source communities to work together, to collaborate. You guys need to have conference funding. You need to be able to get together. You need to work with your colleagues around the world. You need the infrastructure to do that. You need representative organizations. And that's the kind of stuff that government and the private sector collaboratively are going to have to fund if we are going to have this thriving global community. And I think my takeaway would be anything that you can do to help to explain that it's not the what, it's not that we want it to be open, it's how do we get there and what do we need to get there that we have to think about. That would really help.
Thanks, Amanda. That's very inspiring. Oliver and Balarama, please.
I didn't go.
Sorry? Sorry. I'm sorry.
I'll go quickly. So yes to all of that, and certainly one of the things that I'm trying to do with Mozilla is provide more of that infrastructure and more of that support. So I think that's 100% to what Amanda said. And I think to link it back to your definition of success, I think it's, yes, we all either need to build or build on open source. I think that's a thing that's going to accelerate us and make it create the alternative and the future that we want. I think we also need to build that idea of trust into the open source or building it and how we deploy it. And so that is a thing, if there's one thing to take away, is it in the same way that security, that the broader landscape of cybersecurity is something that belongs to all of us, that actually open source has really been proven as a powerful way for us to stay as secure as we can in a rapidly changing threat environment. But we know how to do bug bounties. We know how to file bugs, security bugs. We know what it looks like to have a 0 day. Like, we are going to need to do that in a much broader scope of trust as we move into a world of agents and relying on systems that are automated. And so I think that's a thing to get our head around, is we are not just the builders and users of open source, but we need to be the stewards of an environment of trust in order for this to create the kind of benefits we want for each other. And we kind of know how to do it. We just need to do it bigger and together, building on what we know from the last 20 years.
Okay, great. Ali and Balaraman?
Thank you. So in my previous job, I was private secretary to Rishi Sunak when he inaugurated this series. And the discussion we're having now is unthinkable from a few years ago. I mean, it felt a bit like a kind of closed shop for closed models, at least if you looked at the kind of cast lists and participation. And I think the theme that we've just heard is the vibrancy of the open source community has not happened by accident. Amanda, thank you for mentioning the initiative that the AI Security Institute did with the open source community. I think the message is that we should have the confidence to do that, and the confidence backed with quite a lot of energy, a bit of a political commitment, and funding, as you suggest.
Okay, so one of the things is that the Indian open source community has been vibrant. I mean, so we even had many of the open source FOSS conferences happen in India as well, and so it's a huge energy in that community. So one of the things that's could potentially be a deterrent for people to think about open source in the modern AI era is perhaps the investment that's required for you to actually build models from scratch. But what we are talking about today is not open source models alone, right? We're talking about open source tools for trustworthiness, benchmarking, testing, safety, and so on and so forth. And in fact, a lot of the application-oriented testing that we have to do has to come from the community. There is no way developers sitting in a lab who are working on optimizing, engineering the last bit of efficiency into these models are not going to really worry about what really are the ground truth benchmark. In fact, we have been doing a lot of work on audio deepfakes now, and we find that the benchmarks that people have been evaluating these on are not at all good indicators on how you would deploy these audio deepfake tools in the field. They don't work well. I mean, they score very well on benchmarks, but when you're actually trying to use them for filtering fake calls, they don't work that well.
Namaste, good afternoon to respected sirs and madams in the panel members and respected sirs and madams in the audience. My question is compare and contrast relating to artificial intelligence open source tools for building, implementing and making consistent, sustainable, safety, security, healthy ecosystem relating to open source tools to solve real world problems in the nature or society or in the business environment in A to Z domains. I will give two case studies also relating to healthcare and algorithmic trading, and relating to artificial intelligence and integrating with human intelligence. What will be the safety, security, healthy and trustworthiness ecosystem building? Compare and contrast between those two things relating to these A to Z domains. One is algorithmic varies. In that scenario, how to build safety and security for the investment made by the investors and traders, and to make trustworthiness for their investment to get a result. In that 1 by 10 to the power of 9th part of a second, they can gain the money or they can lose the money. That is one use case or case study. Second one is relating to medical domain, relating to robotic surgery, and within that fraction of seconds, the patient's stage may changes. In this scenario, compare and contrast relating to artificial intelligence and integrating with human intelligence and artificial intelligence.
So if you want us to answer it, you're going to have to give us some time because you're finishing our time.
Yeah, yeah. We need very short, 30 seconds, 20 seconds questions. I'm sorry.
Are we doing 2 or 3 questions and then answering?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So my first question would be for. I'll keep it short. My first question is for Oliver. I'm glad you mentioned UKAC because I'm interested in that. So my first question is, what are your thoughts on AI 2027 model, and what personally what AI safety methodology that you follow? Is it AI control, steering vectors, etc.? So yeah, that's my question for you.
I think in interest of time.
Okay, a quick version is a plurality of methodologies, quite a lot of which is published on our website. I mean, in the spirit of the discussion we've just had, the UKAC makes a virtue of publishing its research agenda and kind of blogging and uploading periodically about its results. And then we've also published the Frontier AI Trends Report in December, which is a kind of synthesis of all we've observed kind of open source in the world. So yeah, a variety of methodologies.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid we ran out of time. I'm being told we're out of time for additional questions, but I wanted to thank our panelists for such a rich and thought-provoking discussion. We can, other additional questions, you can grab the panelists if you can before they run away and ask them. But I think just as we've heard today, open source tools aren't a technical matter, they're fundamental to democratizing trust in AI and ensuring that communities everywhere can participate in building safer and more trustworthy AI systems. What emerged from our conversation that I heard is the real gaps existing in open source tooling ecosystem, particularly in the global south, enormous potential of open source approaches, the concrete actions we can all take together, a lot of them, and to open source, contributing to open source projects, sharing knowledge among communities, or advocating for more inclusive governance. So thank you again to Audrey, Amanda, Balarama, Mark, and Ali for sharing your expertise and insights. And thank you for being part of this important conversation to everyone in the room. We have small tokens of appreciation for all of you. In the form of bags.
Thank you, friend.